Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now let's begin. The Singapore skyline stretched beyond the hotel window, 43 floors of separation from the streets below. Marcus Leon sat at the mahogany desk, reviewing another contract clause that would save his company millions, when his phone vibrated. The screen showed Singapore General Hospital in green text. His stomach tightened. He'd listed this number as his emergency contact for his son Ethan's school records, even while abroad. Mr. Leon? The voice was professional, measured, the kind that delivered bad news for a living. This is Dr. Patricia Chun from Chicago Memorial. Your son Ethan is in our intensive care unit. You need to come home immediately. Marcus's pen stopped mid-signature. What happened? Severe burns covering approximately 60% of his body. He's stable but critical. Your wife is here, but we need you. The call ended before he could ask more. Marcus's hands moved automatically, laptop closed, files gathered, phone already dialing his assistant. Gary, cancel everything. Book me on the next flight to Chicago. I don't care what it costs. 12 years ago, Marcus had been a different man. Fresh out of the Marine Corps, he'd taken a job as a logistics coordinator at a pharmaceutical company, thinking it would be temporary. He'd met Belinda Villanueva at a charity fundraiser. She'd been elegant, charming, working as an event coordinator for her family's company. She'd seemed genuinely interested in his stories about optimizing supply chains and efficiency systems, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm when she talked. Their courtship had been quick. Her family ran Villanueva Medical Consultants, a firm that connected hospitals with specialists. Her mother Maggie had been polite but distant at their first meeting, sizing Marcus up like a business proposition. Her brother Kurt, already finishing his medical residency, had been openly dismissive. Military to logistics? That's quite a step down, he'd said over their engagement dinner. But Belinda had defended him. Marcus is brilliant. He sees patterns nobody else can. That's why his company keeps promoting him. She'd squeezed his hand under the table. Ethan had arrived 2 years into the marriage, and Marcus had thrown himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything. He learned to braid hair by watching YouTube videos at 2 a.m. during feeding sessions, memorized every allergy warning on baby food labels, built a treehouse that passed structural engineering standards. His son became the center of his universe. The cracks had started small. Belinda spending more time with her family. Weekends at her mother's estate in Lake Forest. Mom needs help with the business, she'd explain. Marcus had buried himself in work, traveling more frequently for his company, which had expanded into international markets. His gift for seeing inefficiencies and fixing them had made him indispensable. Dad, do I have to go to Grandma's this weekend? Ethan had asked 3 months ago, during one of Marcus's brief stays home between Tokyo and Frankfurt. Why not, buddy? I thought you liked the big house. Ethan, 9 years old with Marcus's dark hair and Belinda's green eyes, had looked down at his homework. Grandma says weird things, like how you're not really part of the family. And Uncle Kurt keeps asking me medical questions and writing stuff down in his notebook. Marcus had felt something cold settle in his chest. What kind of questions? Like if I get hurt easily, if I've ever had seizures. He made me stand on one leg with my eyes closed and time me. Ethan had shrugged, but Marcus had seen the discomfort. It's probably just doctor stuff. Marcus had planned to address it when he returned from Singapore. The contract there was worth $40 million, 3 weeks of negotiations, and he'd be home. He'd promised Ethan a fishing trip to Wisconsin, just the two of them. Now, 30,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, Marcus stared at the seat back screen showing their flight path. 14 hours. The flight attendant had moved him to first class without asking after seeing his face. He declined everything except water, his mind running scenarios. Burns. 60%. Children didn't just fall into fireplaces. And if they did, someone pulled them out immediately. 60% meant prolonged exposure. Meant no one helped. His phone had stayed on airplane mode, but he downloaded every message before boarding. One for Belinda. There's been an accident. Ethan fell near the fireplace at Mom's house. The doctors are taking care of him. Fly safe. Fell near the fireplace. Not into. Near. The flight stretched on. Marcus didn't sleep. Instead, He mapped out the logistics of what came next. Which hospital, which doctors, which specialists. He pulled up medical journals on his tablet, reading about burn treatment protocols, skin grafts, infection rates. His military training kicked in: assess, plan, execute. But underneath the clinical analysis, rage built like pressure behind a dam. If someone had hurt his son, if someone had let him burn, there would be accounting. The plane touched down at O'Hare at 3:47 a.m. Chicago time. Marcus had no luggage except his carry-on. He'd taken a taxi straight to Chicago Memorial, arriving as the night shift nurses were completing their rounds. The ICU was on the 7th floor, restricted access. Marcus showed his ID to the nurse at the desk, a young woman named Hannah Griffith, according to her badge. Her expression shifted when she saw his name. "Mr. Leon, your wife is in the family waiting room. Dr. Townsend wanted to speak with you before you see Ethan. I want to see my son first." Hannah hesitated, then nodded. "Room 714. But please, prepare yourself." Nothing could have prepared him. Ethan lay in a specialized bed, surrounded by monitors and 4 lines. Bandages covered most of his small body, leaving only parts of his face visible. His eyes were closed, his breathing assisted by a ventilator. The smell of antiseptic couldn't quite mask the underlying scent of burned flesh. Marcus stood in the doorway, and for the first time in his adult life, felt his knees weaken. This was his son, his boy who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist, who insisted on wearing mismatched socks because it made him unique, who'd hugged Marcus goodbye at the airport 3 weeks ago and said, "Bring me back something cool, Dad." A hand touched his shoulder. Marcus turned to see a man in his 50s, wearing scrubs and a white coat. Dr. Kurt Townsend, according to his badge. Something about the name tickled Marcus's memory, but his brain was too focused on Ethan. "Mr. Leon, I'm Dr. Townsend, head of the burn unit. Let's talk in my office." Marcus didn't move. "Tell me here. Your son has 2nd and 3rd degree burns covering approximately 60% of his body, concentrated on his back, legs, and arms. The burns are consistent with prolonged exposure to extreme heat." Townsend's voice was professionally sympathetic. "He's sedated currently to manage the pain. We've started skin graft procedures, but the recovery will be extensive. Months, possibly years of treatment." "How did this happen?" "According to your wife, Ethan was playing near the fireplace at his grandmother's home. He tripped and fell backward into the fire. By the time she and her mother pulled him out, the damage was severe." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Where's my wife?" "Waiting room. 2nd door on your left." Townsend's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Leon, I understand this is traumatic, but your son is receiving the best possible care. Trust the process." Trust. The word landed wrong. Marcus found Belinda in a small room with beige walls and uncomfortable chairs. She'd been beautiful once, still was objectively. But now, seeing her stand as he entered, mascara smudged and wearing yesterday's clothes, Marcus saw something different in her face. Something that didn't match the tears. "Marcus!" She moved toward him, arms out for an embrace. He stepped back. "Tell me exactly what happened." Belinda's arms dropped. "It was horrible. We were at Mom's house for Sunday dinner. Ethan was playing in the living room. You know that big fireplace she has. I was in the kitchen helping Mom with dessert, and we heard screaming. Her voice cracked convincingly. By the time we got there, he'd fallen into the fire. We pulled him out, called 911 immediately. Marcus, it happened so fast. Where were you exactly? How far from the living room?" "The kitchen, I told you. Maybe 30 feet. Belinda's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why are you interrogating me? Our son is fighting for his life, and you're acting like I'm a suspect." Marcus studied her face, the micro-expressions he'd learned to read during military intelligence briefings, the slight tension around her eyes, the way her left hand gripped her right wrist. Classic self-soothing behavior, often associated with deception. "I'm trying to understand how a 9-year-old boy gets 60% of his body burned, while 2 adults are 30 feet away. It was an accident." Belinda's voice rose, then she seemed to catch herself. "I know you're upset. I know you're tired from the flight. But don't take this out on me. I've been here for 20 hours straight, watching our baby suffer, wondering if you'd even make it in time. The guilt card. Marcus recognized the tactic. He'd seen it before in their arguments. Belinda redirecting blame, making him the villain for questioning her. He nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. He let his voice break slightly. I just need to see him again. Belinda's shoulders relaxed. Of course. We'll get through this together. As a family. She moved closer, taking his hand. Her fingers were cold. Dr. Townsend says he'll pull through. We just have to be patient. Dr. Townsend. Marcus filed that away. He returned to Ethan's room and sat in the chair beside the bed, taking his son's hand carefully, avoiding the 4 lines and bandaged areas. The monitors beeped steadily. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications. Around 6 a.m., a nurse Marcus hadn't seen before entered. Alexandra Duncan, older, with kind eyes and efficient movements. She checked Ethan's chart, then glanced at Marcus. You're the father? Yes. Alexandra's expression softened. He's been asking for you. Before we increased the sedation. She hesitated. Mr. Leon, has anyone discussed the nature of the burns with you in detail? Dr. Townsend said they were consistent with fire exposure. They are. But, she glanced at the door, then lowered her voice. I've worked in burn units for 23 years. These burns have a pattern that's unusual for a simple fall into a fireplace. The distribution, the depth variations. I've seen it before in cases where, she stopped herself. I shouldn't speculate, but you might want to request a second opinion on the injury assessment. Before Marcus could respond, she'd moved on to the next patient. But her words burrowed into his mind. Pattern. Distribution. What pattern did she see? At 8 a.m., Dr. Townsend returned with another doctor, a younger man with a clipboard and expensive shoes. Mr. Leon, this is Dr. Joseph Pratt, our pediatric trauma specialist. He'll be consulting on Ethan's case. They discussed treatment plans, recovery timelines, statistical survival rates. Marcus listened, asked technical questions that surprised them both, referenced studies he'd read on the plane. He'd always had a gift for absorbing information and applying it logically. You've done your research, Pratt noted approvingly. My son's life depends on it. Around 10 a.m., Ethan's sedation was lightened for a routine check. Marcus saw his son's eyes flutter open, unfocused and full of pain despite the medications. Marcus leaned close. Hey, buddy, Dad's here. You're going to be okay. Ethan's mouth moved, but the ventilator prevented speech. His eyes found Marcus's face, and tears leaked from the corners. His right hand, less bandaged than the left, twitched toward the bedside table. A nurse noticed. He's been reaching for that. We thought he wanted water, but he can't drink with the tube. Marcus followed the gesture. A napkin sat on the table, standard hospital issue. He picked it up, and Ethan's eyes widened with urgency. You want this, buddy? The smallest nod. Marcus looked at the napkin more carefully. It had writing on it. Child's handwriting, shaky and painful, done with what looked like a pen that had bled through the thin paper. His blood froze as he read the words. Grandma pushed me. MOM watched. Don't trust the doctor. He's uncle. Marcus's face remained perfectly neutral. Years of military poker games and high-stakes business negotiations had taught him control. He looked at his son, saw the fear and pleading in those eyes, and smiled gently. Don't worry about anything, buddy. I'm here now. Rest. But inside, something fundamental shifted. The dam didn't break. It transformed into something harder, colder, more purposeful. He folded the napkin carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Then he stood and walked to the waiting room where Belinda sat scrolling through her phone. She looked up, and Marcus made sure his expression showed nothing but exhausted concern. I believe you, he said quietly. About the accident. I was wrong to question you. Belinda's face flooded with relief. Thank you. I know you were just scared. We both are. I think I should stay at your mother's house for a few days. Be close to the hospital, and I'd like to see where it happened. Maybe if I understand it better, I can. He let the sentence trail off. Of course. Mom would want that. She's devastated, Marcus. She blames herself. I'm sure she does. That afternoon, Marcus drove to the Villanueva estate in Lake Forest. The house was a sprawling Tudor-style mansion, set back from the road behind iron gates. Maggie Villanueva met him at the door, a woman in her 60s who'd maintained her looks through what Marcus suspected was extensive plastic surgery. She wore black, as if in mourning. "Marcus, I'm so terribly sorry. If I could take it back." Her voice broke convincingly. He embraced her, feeling her stiffen slightly at the contact. "These things happen, Maggie. I just want to see the room." The living room was enormous, with a stone fireplace that dominated one wall. Marcus studied it carefully. The hearth was elevated, surrounded by a decorative iron screen. The floor was hardwood, expensive Persian rugs placed strategically. "He was playing right there," Maggie said, pointing to a spot about 6 feet from the fireplace, "with his toy dinosaurs. I was showing Belinda some paperwork in the kitchen, business documents for the company. We heard the screams and ran in, but he was already in the flames. We pulled him out, called 911. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. Marcus walked the space, his mind calculating angles and physics. 6 feet was a considerable distance. For a child to trip and fall backward that far, with enough momentum to end up in the fire. Was the screen in place? Yes, but he must have knocked it aside when he fell. The screen was heavy wrought iron, at least 30 pounds. A 9-year-old falling backward wouldn't have the force to move it, but someone pushing him. Marcus noticed something else. The rug nearest the fireplace had been replaced recently. He could tell from the way it didn't quite match the fading of the others. He knelt down, examining the floor beneath. Hardwood, but newer boards in a 3-foot section. "Did you refinish the floor?" Maggie's hesitation was brief, but noticeable. "We had some water damage last month. Had to replace a few boards." Marcus stood, smiled. "The place looks beautiful, Maggie. You've always had such good taste." That night, lying in the guest room, the same room Belinda had grown up in, Marcus waited until 2 a.m., then slipped out. He had basic lock-picking skills from his Marine Corps days, enough to access Maggie's home office. The paperwork was meticulously organized. Villanueva Medical Consultants had contracts with 40 hospitals across the Midwest. Marcus photographed documents with his phone, not entirely sure what he was looking for, but trusting his instincts. Then he found a file labeled Insurance Policies, Family. Inside were life insurance documents. Standard policies for Maggie and her late husband, who died 5 years ago. Policies for Belinda, and one for Ethan Leon, taken out 3 months ago, with a death benefit of $5 million. The beneficiaries were listed as Belinda Leon and Maggie Villanueva. Marcus's hands didn't shake as he photographed every page, but his mind was racing. $5 million on a 9-year-old boy. 3 months ago, right around the time Ethan had mentioned his uncle asking strange medical questions. He replaced everything exactly as he'd found it and returned to his room. Sleep didn't come. Instead, he sat in the dark, assembling the pieces. The next morning, he returned to the hospital early. Dr. Townsend was doing rounds, all professional concern and technical expertise. Marcus watched him carefully, noting the way he avoided direct eye contact, the practiced sympathy that felt rehearsed. Townsend. The name had bothered Marcus since he'd first heard it. He pulled up his phone and searched Kurt Villanueva, Chicago physician. The results showed Dr. Kurt Villanueva, burn specialist at Northwestern Memorial. Marcus expanded the search. Kurt Villanueva Townsend. There, a marriage announcement from 8 years ago. Dr. Kurt Villanueva married Patricia Townsend. A second search showed that Kurt had changed his last name to Townsend after the marriage, apparently for professional reasons. Dr. Kurt Townsend sounded less ethnic, Marcus supposed. Better for business. So Belinda's brother was treating Ethan. The same Uncle Ethan had warned him about. The same doctor who'd been asking strange questions 3 months ago. Marcus found Nurse Alexandra during her afternoon shift. "You mentioned wanting a second opinion on Ethan's injury pattern. Can you recommend someone?" She wrote down a name without hesitation. Dr. Roland Holmes. He's a University of Chicago Medical Center. He specializes in pediatric trauma and forensic burn analysis. He's testified in court cases. The implication was clear. "Thank you." Marcus waited until Belinda went home to shower and change. Then he approached the hospital administration with a calm, reasonable request. He wanted to transfer his son to a different facility for a second opinion. Dr. Townsend had been excellent, of course, but as a concerned father, he needed to explore all options. The hospital couldn't legally prevent a transfer. By 8 p.m. that night, Ethan was being transported by medical ambulance to University of Chicago Medical Center, with Marcus riding alongside. He told Belinda it was just for some additional testing, would only be overnight. She'd protested, but couldn't stop him. He was the father, and he'd signed the authorization forms. Dr. Roland Holmes was a tall black man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He examined Ethan personally, studying the burns with a level of attention that Townsend had never shown. After 2 hours, he invited Marcus into his office. "Mr. Leon, these burns are not consistent with a simple fall into a fireplace. The pattern suggests your son was held or pinned against a heat source for an extended period. I'd estimate between 60 and 90 seconds. The depth of the burns on his back specifically indicates sustained contact with extreme temperatures while pressure was applied." Marcus's voice came out flat. "Someone held him in the fire. That would be my professional assessment. Additionally, there are bruise marks on his shoulders and upper arms, partially obscured by the burns, that suggest restraint. Someone gripped him from behind." Holmes pulled up digital images on his computer. "See here? These contusions match adult finger placement. Can you prove it? In court? With the right forensic analysis? Yes. These injuries tell a story, Mr. Leon. And it's not the story you've been told." Holmes leaned forward. "There's something else. We ran additional blood work, standard protocol for burns this severe. Your son has elevated levels of diazepam in his system. Valium, yes, enough to make him drowsy and compliant, but not enough to render him unconscious. Someone drugged him before the burning occurred." Marcus sat perfectly still. "What's your recommendation, doctor?" "I'm calling the FBI. These injuries indicate attempted murder of a minor, possibly for financial gain given the severity and calculation involved. This is beyond local police jurisdiction. This looks like organized crime or conspiracy." Holmes's expression was grim. "I've seen this pattern before in insurance fraud cases. Is there a significant life insurance policy on your son?" $5 million. Taken out 3 months ago." Holmes's jaw tightened. "Then we need federal investigators. Now, and Mr. Leon, your son is not safe if certain people know where he is." "I understand." Marcus made one call to Gary Fitch, his executive assistant back in Singapore. "Gary, I need you to do something for me. Call the Singapore office, tell them I'm taking emergency family leave. Then I need you to contact the company's legal team. Ask for William Richmond. He handled that fraud case last year. Tell him I need him in Chicago within 24 hours, and it's a matter of life and death." The FBI arrived at 11 p.m. 2 agents, Special Agent Lowell McCormick and Special Agent Hannah Griffith. They interviewed Marcus for 3 hours, taking his statement, reviewing the medical evidence, examining the photographs he'd taken of the insurance documents. McCormick was mid-40s, with the methodical manner of someone who'd built too many cases to rush to judgment. "Mr. Leon, what you're describing is a conspiracy to commit murder for financial gain, possibly involving a medical professional who falsified treatment records. These are serious allegations. I have a napkin written by my 9-year-old son, medical evidence from a respected burn specialist, and insurance documents that show motive. What more do you need? We need to build a case that will hold up in court. That means surveillance, financial records, phone taps, and careful coordination. If we move too soon, they'll lawyer up and we'll lose the chance for justice." McCormick's expression softened slightly. "But I believe you, Mr. Leon, and we're going to help you." Griffith added, "The hospital where your son was initially treated, Chicago Memorial, has contracts with Villanueva Medical Consultants. We'll be investigating those relationships as well. If Dr. Townsend falsified records or provided substandard care intentionally, that's medical malpractice at minimum, attempted murder at maximum." Marcus thought of Ethan's napkin. Don't trust the doctor. He's uncle. His 9-year-old son, sedated and in agony, had still tried to protect him with that warning. "What do you need from me?" "Go back to your wife," McCormick said. "Act normal." Grieve, be supportive, play the worried father. We'll monitor communications and gather evidence. Don't confront anyone. Don't let them know you suspect anything. Can you do that? Marcus had spent 3 weeks negotiating a $40 million contract in Singapore, maintaining perfect composure while 3 different companies tried to undercut each other. He'd survived military operations in hostile territory where showing fear meant death. I can do that. One more thing, Griffith said. Your son is a material witness. We're placing him under protective custody, disguised as continued medical treatment. As far as anyone knows, he's still critical and sedated. But he'll be safe, and he can't be accessed by anyone except approved medical staff and you. Marcus returned to the Lake Forest estate at 3 a.m. Belinda was awake, pacing. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. At the hospital. They had to run more tests. I fell asleep in the waiting room. My phone died. Marcus showed her the dead phone. I'm sorry. I should have told you. Belinda's anger faded into concern. How is he? The same. They're keeping him heavily sedated while they do the skin grafts. Marcus pulled her into an embrace, feeling her relax against him. I'm sorry I doubted you earlier. This whole thing has me twisted up inside. I understand. We're both terrified. She pulled back, studying his face. But we'll get through this. Together. Together, Marcus echoed, thinking of a napkin in his pocket and the FBI agents preparing their case. Of course. The next morning, Maggie Villanueva made breakfast, an elaborate spread that Marcus recognized as performance. Everything was perfect: French toast, fresh fruit, imported coffee. She moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, playing the role of concerned grandmother. I've been thinking, she said, pouring Marcus coffee. Once Ethan is recovered enough, perhaps he should stay here for a while. The house has plenty of room, and he'll need constant care. With your travel schedule, it might be too much for Belinda to handle alone. Marcus added cream to his coffee slowly. That's very generous, Maggie. Let's see how the recovery goes. Of course. I just want to help. He's my only grandson. Her voice caught convincingly. I keep replaying that moment in my mind. If only I'd been watching more carefully. If only I'd kept him away from the fireplace. You can't blame yourself, Marcus said, meeting her eyes. Accidents happen. Something flickered in her expression. Satisfaction quickly masked. She thought he'd bought it. Good. Over the next week, Marcus played his role perfectly. He divided his time between the hospital and the Villanueva estate. Always the concerned father, always grateful for his wife's support. He had dinner with Belinda and Maggie, listened to their plans for Ethan's recovery, nodded along when they discussed the insurance payout that would cover medical expenses. It's fortunate we took out that policy, Belinda said one night. I know it seemed excessive at the time, but now... You were right to insist on it, Marcus agreed. I should have listened to you. Meanwhile, the FBI worked. McCormick called him twice a day with updates, using a burner phone Marcus kept hidden. They'd obtain warrants for financial records, phone records, and email communications. The picture emerging was damning. 3 months ago, Maggie Villanueva's company had faced a major lawsuit. A patient had died due to a specialist they'd recommended, and the family was seeking $50 million in damages. The Villanueva family assets were substantial, but tied up in trusts and property. They needed liquid cash. Around the same time, Kurt Townsend, formerly Kurt Villanueva, had begun researching burn injuries and recovery statistics. His hospital searches had been extensive. Survival rates for children with extensive burns, legal definitions of accidental injury versus assault, insurance claim processing for trauma cases. Belinda's phone records showed 17 calls to her mother in the week before Ethan's injury. Text messages discussed the plan and timing. The evidence was building. But McCormick wanted more. He wanted them to incriminate themselves further. We need proof of the actual assault, he told Marcus. Everything we have is circumstantial. Good enough for charges, maybe, but not for guaranteed convictions. We need one of them to talk, to confess, or to make a move that proves intent. Marcus had an idea. What if they thought they'd succeeded? What do you mean? What if Ethan took a turn for the worse? What if he died? Marcus's voice was cold, calculating. How would they react? McCormick was quiet for a moment. That's dangerous, Mr. Leon. If they think they've won, they might disappear, flee the country, or they might celebrate, get careless, say things they wouldn't otherwise say. Marcus had run logistics for military operations. He understood risk assessment. Wire the house. Wire Maggie's office. Then tell them their grandson died from complications. That's going to devastate your wife, if she's involved. My wife watched my son burn, Marcus said quietly. I don't care what devastates her. They plan it carefully. Dr. Holmes would make the call to Belinda, informing her that Ethan had developed a severe infection, gone septic, and died despite their best efforts. The timing would be mid-afternoon, when Maggie and Belinda would likely be together. FBI surveillance teams were already in place, hidden cameras and microphones throughout the Lake Forest estate. Marcus would be at the office, actually at an FBI field office, watching the feeds. At 2:37 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, Dr. Holmes made the call. Marcus watched on a monitor as Belinda answered her phone in the living room, Maggie sitting across from her reviewing papers. He saw his wife's face change, saw her stand abruptly. What? No, that can't be. Her voice broke. Are you sure? Maggie looked up, concerned. Belinda ended the call, her hand shaking. For a moment, Marcus thought he saw genuine grief cross her face. Then she looked at her mother, and something shifted. He's dead. Ethan's dead. Maggie stood slowly. When? An hour ago. Infection. Dr. Holmes said it was septic shock. They tried everything, but Belinda sat down heavily. Oh my God, what have we done? Nothing, Maggie said sharply. We did nothing. He died from complications of his accident. That's the story. That's the truth. But Belinda was shaking her head, tears streaming. We killed him, Mom. We actually killed him. I knew it was the plan, but I didn't think it would actually happen. Pull yourself together. Maggie's voice turned hard. This is what we needed. The insurance pays out now. The lawsuit gets settled. We survive. He was 9 years old. He was a means to an end. You knew that when you agreed. Maggie moved to the bar, poured 2 glasses of scotch. Marcus will grieve. We'll grieve with him. And in 6 months, we'll be solvent again. Everything goes back to normal. Normal? Belinda's laugh was slightly hysterical. I just killed my son. We didn't kill him. Kurt handled it. And even if someone suspected something, what proof is there? The hospital records show an accidental burn. There's no evidence of foul play. Maggie handed Belinda the scotch. Drink. Breathe. In a few hours, you'll call Marcus at the office. You'll break the news gently, and we'll all mourn together like a proper family. At the FBI office, Marcus watched this exchange with McCormick and Griffith flanking him. His face was granite. Did you get it? He asked quietly. Every word, Griffith confirmed. That's confession to conspiracy to commit murder and strong implication of accessory after the fact. Combined with the financial evidence and medical records, we can make arrests. Marcus nodded. Do it. But Maggie wasn't finished. On the screen, she pulled out her phone and dialed. It rang twice before someone answered. Kurt, it's done. The boy died this afternoon. Infection, according to the hospital. No, there shouldn't be any complications. The death certificate will list natural causes following accidental injury. A pause. Yes, I know it was risky, but you performed the initial examination. You're the one who created the baseline records. As far as anyone knows, you did everything by the book. Another pause. The insurance should pay within 30 days. Your share is $2 million, as agreed. That should cover your gambling debts with room to spare. Marcus felt something snap inside him, but his expression never changed. Maggie continued. Belinda is handling it as well as can be expected. She knew what she was signing up for when she married him. Poor Marcus, he really did love the boy. Almost makes me feel bad. She laughed. Almost. Look, I need to go. We'll celebrate properly once the check clears. But Kurt, destroy any notes you made about the boy. Anything that could connect you to the planning stages. We need to be clean. She ended the call and turned to Belinda. Your brother says hello, and to stay strong. Belinda wiped her eyes. I need to call Marcus. Not yet. Give it another hour. Let him wonder. Then you'll call, sobbing, barely able to speak. He'll rush home. We'll all cry together, and this nightmare will be over. Marcus stood. I want to be there when you arrest them. McCormick shook his head. That's not protocol, Mr. Leon. You're too close to this. They planned to kill my son for money. They drugged him, held him in a fire, and then faked his death certificate through a corrupt doctor. I've stayed calm. I've played my part, and I've helped you build your case. I'm asking you for this. Marcus's voice was steel. I want to see their faces when they realize they failed. McCormick and Griffith exchanged looks. Finally, Griffith nodded. You can ride with us, but you stay in the car when we make the arrest. No exceptions. Agreed. The FBI descended on the Lake Forest estate at 4:15 p.m. with 3 vehicles and 8 agents. Marcus sat in the back of McCormick's SUV, watching his agents in tactical gear approach the house. Maggie opened the door, surprised to see federal agents. Can I help you? Maggie Villanueva, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder of a minor, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. McCormick read her rights while another agent handcuffed her. Her face went white. What? This is insane. I haven't. Belinda appeared in the doorway. Mom? What's happening? Belinda Leon, you're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and fraud. Belinda saw Marcus then, sitting in the car. Their eyes met across the distance. She understood immediately. The broken expression on her face confirmed it. Marcus, please. Let me explain. You have the right to remain silent, the agent continued. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. A third team was simultaneously arresting Dr. Kurt Townsend at Chicago Memorial Hospital. They timed it perfectly. He was mid-rounds, surrounded by colleagues and patients when the federal agents walked in. The humiliation was public and complete. Marcus waited until both women were secured in separate vehicles before he stepped out of the SUV. He walked to the car holding Belinda and tapped on the window. The agent driving looked at McCormick, who nodded. The window lowered. Marcus, please listen to me. Belinda's voice was desperate. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't want to hurt him. I just needed the money. Mom's company was failing, and she said it was the only way. I thought maybe he'd just get hurt a little, maybe some minor burns enough for insurance claim, but then... Stop talking, Marcus said quietly. Just stop, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Marcus leaned closer to the window. Ethan isn't dead. Belinda's face went blank with shock. The FBI faked his death to get your confession. He's alive, recovering, and he told me everything. How his grandmother pushed him into the fireplace while you watched. How his uncle had been drugging his food at family dinners for weeks, asking him medical questions, preparing for this. How you all planned to murder a 9-year-old child for insurance money. Marcus's voice never rose above conversational level, but each word landed like a hammer. You're going to federal prison for attempted murder. You'll never see him again, and he'll grow up knowing that his mother tried to kill him. Belinda started screaming then, incoherent and wild. The agent rolled up the window and drove away. Marcus returned to McCormick's SUV. His hands were perfectly steady. Feel better? McCormick asked. Not yet. The case moved quickly. With the recorded confessions, financial evidence, and medical testimony from Dr. Holmes, the federal prosecutor had everything needed. All 3 defendants were denied bail, flight risk, and severity of charges. Marcus hired William Richmond, the company's top litigator, to monitor the proceedings and ensure justice was served. Richmond was a shark in expensive suits, the kind of lawyer who'd built his career on destroying white-collar criminals. They're going to try to make deals, Richmond told Marcus over coffee. That's standard in conspiracy cases. The first one to flip gets the lightest sentence. Can they? The prosecutor will consider it, but with confessions this clear, they don't need cooperation. My recommendation? Let them fight each other. It'll only strengthen the case. Marcus thought about it. What if I wanted to make this worse for them? Richmond raised an eyebrow. Legally or illegally? Legally. I've broken no laws, and I won't start now. But within the bounds of the law, I want them to suffer. Richmond smiled. Then let's discuss civil suits. You can sue all 3 for emotional damages, medical expenses, and punitive damages. The insurance policy they took out? We can argue it should pay you, not them, since it was part of the conspiracy. Between criminal charges and civil liability, we can ensure they lose everything. Do it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Marcus attended every day, sitting in the front row, making eye contact with each defendant whenever they looked his direction. Ethan was recovering well at University of Chicago Medical Center. The grafts were taking, the infections cleared. He'd have scars, both physical and emotional, but Dr. Holmes was optimistic about his physical recovery. The prosecution built their case methodically. They played the surveillance recordings, showed the financial documents, called Dr. Holmes to testify about the injuries. They presented phone records showing the conspiracy taking shape over months. The defense tried to argue that Maggie and Belinda had been speaking hypothetically on the surveillance tapes, that Kurt's research was purely academic, that the insurance policy was coincidental. But the jury didn't buy it. On day 18 of the trial, the defense made one desperate play. They called Belinda to testify, hoping her tears and contrition might sway the jury. Richmond, acting as a witness for the prosecution, cross-examined her brutally. Mrs. Leon, you stated that you didn't want to hurt your son. Can you explain how watching him burn for 60 to 90 seconds constitutes not wanting to hurt him? I was scared. My mother, she's very controlling. I didn't think she'd actually... You didn't think she'd actually do what? The plan you discussed in 17 phone calls over 2 weeks? The plan that involved your brother drugging your son to make him compliant? The plan that required you to schedule a family dinner specifically on a day when your husband would be in Singapore? Belinda couldn't answer. Mrs. Leon, you were in the room when your son was pushed into a fireplace. You watched him burn. You heard him scream. And you did nothing. Is that correct? I froze. I didn't know what to do. Richmond pulled out a report. According to the fire department response team, the 911 call came 17 minutes after the initial burn injury, based on the progression of the injuries and the body's physiological response. 17 minutes. What were you doing during those 17 minutes while your son was in agony? I don't remember. You don't remember? Let me refresh your memory. You and your mother cleaned up the scene. You moved the fireplace screen. You removed evidence. You called your brother to coordinate the story. Only then did you call 911. Richmond's voice cut like a blade. And you did all of this while your 9-year-old son lay on the floor, 60% of his body burned, begging for help. The jury's faces showed everything. Disgust, anger, absolute condemnation. The verdict came back in 4 hours, guilty on all counts for all 3 defendants. Sentencing happened a month later. Federal guidelines for attempted murder of a minor, especially with conspiracy and financial motivation, were harsh. Maggie Villanueva, 35 years, no possibility of parole for 25. Dr. Kurt Townsend, 40 years, including additional charges for medical malpractice, falsifying records, and abuse of his position. His medical license was permanently revoked. Belinda Leon, 30 years, no possibility of parole for 20. Marcus sat in the courtroom as the judge read the sentences, his face impassive. The civil suit was still pending, but Richmond assured him they'd win, probably to the tune of $20 million in damages, plus the $5 million insurance policy. The Villanueva estate would be liquidated to pay it. But Marcus didn't care about the money. After sentencing, he visited Ethan in the hospital. His son was sitting up now, bandages reduced, able to speak without assistance. The physical therapy was brutal, but Ethan approached it with the same determination Marcus had always admired. Dad? Did they? Ethan's voice was still rough, damaged from the screaming and smoke inhalation. They're going to prison for a long time, buddy. They can't hurt you anymore. Ethan nodded slowly. Is Mom really? Did she really want to kill me? This was the hard part. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, taking his son's hand carefully. Yes. I'm sorry, but yes. She and your grandmother and uncle planned it. For money. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. Why? What did I do? Nothing. You did nothing wrong. They're sick, broken people who made terrible choices. None of that is your fault. Marcus squeezed gently. You survived because you're strong. You warned me, you fought, and you survived. I'm so proud of you. What happens now? Now you heal. We'll give you the best physical therapy, the best counseling, everything you need. And when you're ready, we'll go on that fishing trip to Wisconsin I promised you. Just the two of us." Ethan managed a small smile. "Can we stop for ice cream on the way?" "Absolutely." Over the next 6 months, Marcus restructured his life. He took a leave of absence from work, using the time to focus entirely on Ethan's recovery. They moved to a new house in Evanston, away from Lake Forest and its memories. Marcus hired a team, physical therapists, counselors, tutors, to support Ethan's healing. The civil suit concluded with a judgment of $18 million. Marcus placed most of it in a trust for Ethan's future, education, medical care, whatever he needed. The Villanueva estate was dismantled piece by piece to satisfy the judgment. The house in Lake Forest was sold at auction. Marcus attended, watching as strangers picked over the furniture and artwork. The fireplace, that goddamn fireplace, was torn out by the new owners during renovation. Marcus had requested photos of its destruction. He'd framed one and kept it in his office as a reminder. Maggie, Belinda, and Kurt all appealed their sentences. All appeals were denied. Richmond had built the case too well, and their own recorded confessions made any reversal impossible. Marcus received letters from Belinda, dozens of them, pleading for forgiveness, claiming she'd changed, insisting she still loved Ethan. He burned every one without reading past the first few lines. Ethan deserved better than a mother who'd watch him burn. Maggie never wrote. She'd been attacked by other inmates twice in her first year. Apparently, even hardened criminals had standards regarding crimes against children. She'd been moved to protective custody, where she'd spend the next 24 years isolated and alone. Kurt had tried to hang himself in his cell 3 months into his sentence. He'd been found in time and placed on suicide watch. He'd survived to serve his full 40 years. 1 year after the arrests, Marcus and Ethan stood on the shore of a lake in northern Wisconsin, fishing rods in hand. Ethan still wore compression garments over his scars, and his movements were stiffer than they'd been before, but he was smiling. "Got one," Ethan shouted, his rod bending with the weight of a fish. Marcus helped him reel it in, a decent-sized bass, fighting hard against the line. Together they brought it to shore. Ethan's face lit with excitement. "That's at least 3 pounds, Marcus said. "Biggest one today. Can we keep it? What do you think?" Ethan studied the fish for a long moment, then shook his head. "Let it go. It fought hard. It deserves to swim away." They released the bass back into the water, watching it disappear into the depths. Marcus put his arm around his son's shoulders carefully, mindful of the healing skin. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," Marcus said quietly. "When it happened, I should have been home." "You came back," Ethan replied. "You saved me. You believed me when nobody else would have. I'll always believe you. Always protect you. That's my job." "I know, Dad." Ethan leaned against him. "I know." They fished until sunset, catching and releasing a dozen more fish. On the drive home, Ethan fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted but content. Marcus drove through the darkness, his son breathing steadily beside him, and thought about the napkin that had started everything. He still had it, locked in a safe at home. Evidence, yes, but also a reminder of his son's courage. 9 years old, sedated, in agony, and still clear-headed enough to write a warning. Still brave enough to trust that his father would understand. Marcus had built a career on seeing patterns, on finding inefficiencies and fixing them. The biggest inefficiency in his life had been trusting people who'd never deserved it. He wouldn't make that mistake again. But efficiency wasn't the point anymore. The point was the sleeping child beside him, the fishing trips they'd take, the life they'd build together. The point was that evil had tried to destroy something good, and it had failed. Marcus Leon had faced the worst thing a parent could imagine, and he'd won. Not through violence or revenge, though he'd wanted both, but through patience, strategy, and the law. He'd let the system work, helped it work, and watched as justice was served completely and absolutely. The scars would remain. For Ethan, physical. For Marcus, knowing that he'd married someone capable of such horror. But scars were proof of survival, evidence of battles fought and won. As they pulled into their driveway, Ethan stirred awake. Home, Marcus confirmed. They went inside together, father and son, into a house with no fireplaces, no secrets, and no monsters hiding behind family names. The past was behind them, locked away in prison cells where it belonged. The future was theirs to build, and Marcus intended to make it extraordinary. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.